All right, well, now that you're verbally lubricated here, all right, for a number of years, the first speaker actually served as the Master of Ceremonies for the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers Picnic. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him up. Now, he told me that he said he wanted to get you guys fired up in a big way. So, without further ado, to fire you guys up, and I think he's going to say some positive things about a woman who would like to have the mayorship in the city of Manchester. Everybody know Victoria Sullivan? Now, for those of you that are not spending time on Twitter sphere, okay, I got to tell you, Victoria Sullivan is one of the people who was absolute cannon fodder for the progressive Democrats here in the state. They just put her through the ringer, and I'll tell you, she's an absolute trooper. So you're really going to like what she has to say and her plans for the city of Manchester. We got to make Manchester red again. Without further ado, host of Girard at Large, Mr. Rich Girard. Thank you.
Nothing like a good introduction to raise your expectations. Thank you. And I'm going to do something that I know is almost futile in this, and I'm going to ask for a moment or two of your undivided attention, especially those of you back by the bar. Am I not loud enough? All right. How about now? All right. I'll treat it. We'll fix that. Here comes Skip. So as I was saying, I'm going to ask for something that very rarely happens here, and that's a moment of your undivided attention, specifically those of you back by the bar and the food. Because what I want to do is I want to outline for you what is at stake in the city of Manchester in this off-year election. As we all know, the first female mayor in the history of the city of Manchester, a Democrat, Joyce Craig, is seeking re-election. And I'm going to leave the discussion of that person's record to other speakers. But what I will say to you is this. There are 24 Democratic candidates for president. Every single one of them, however major or minor, wants Joyce Craig's endorsement. So those of us who have been sort of lighthouses against the storm in Manchester are not only up against a very well-funded city Democratic committee, an interventionalist state Democrat committee, the committed support of the Democrat National Committee, but also the foot soldiers and dollars and donors of 24 Democratic candidates for president. And here's why I wanted to speak first, aside from the fact that I have to leave early because we're celebrating my daughter's 17th birthday today. Congratulations. My question to you is, what are you going to do about what's happening in the city of Manchester? Now, I am a school board candidate who quite candidly, I'm not a school board candidate, I'm a school board incumbent who quite candidly hasn't made up his mind about whether or not he's going to run for re-election. And there are a number of reasons for that, which I am not going to get into right now. But I will tell you that as Manchester goes, so will go the state of New Hampshire in 2020. And while I am a school board candidate and while issues of education are near and dear to my heart, one of the things that I need to see happen in school board races across the city of Manchester, in aldermanic races across the city of Manchester, and certainly in mayoral races across the city of Manchester, are whether or not, regardless of what your issue is, you're going to be there to help. Because it's about time that the people in this room learn that if you're a conservative on education issues, you're probably a conservative on life issues. And if you're a conservative on life issues, you're probably a conservative on gun issues. And if you're a conservative on gun issues, you're probably a conservative on fiscal issues. And if you're a conservative on fiscal issues, you probably actually believe in local control and that people can make decisions for themselves. So my question to you is, whether or not your issue is at stake in the city of Manchester, are you going to be there to help Victoria Sullivan and potentially myself and other candidates who are seeking to be lighthouses against the Democratic storm that is clear and gathered on the horizon, knowing that New Hampshire stands in the balance for 2020? Will you be there? Because if you won't be there, you know who won't be there? When your issue is at stake, when your candidate or your candidacy needs help, it'll be those of us who lost in the city of Manchester, not because we don't want to be, but because we can't be. Because not holding the offices that we hold or seek to hold means our influence over our ability to influence a population in your favor will be gone. From us, from Manchester, and from the city of Manchester, and from the state of New Hampshire. It is time for the people in this room to understand that every election where their ideological colleagues, regardless of their issue, is at stake requires an all-hands-on-deck mentality, requires you to help with the lid drops, to call your friends, to open your wallets, to be our guards on social media, to get involved in the fight. I have watched this for a long time, folks, a very long time. I have been involved in one way, shape, manner, or form in politics in the city of Manchester and the state of New Hampshire since 1991. I'm pushing 30 years in this business. And you know the one thing I haven't seen in 30 years in this business? Are conservatives in a coalition with each other, regardless of the issue, fighting on the same side. We have lost more races because we have hung ourselves out on our one issue or some difference, some denominational difference that we don't like. We have sacrificed the prize of victory on the altar of our own pride. And it needs to come to an end if the city of Manchester and indeed the state of New Hampshire is to be red again. So I'm going to wrap up by saying this. Those of us who may be candidates and those of us who are candidates in the city of Manchester in this off-year election are not just up against the opponents for our seats. We're not just up against the mayor of the city of Manchester. We're not just up against the Democratic Party at the state, local, and national level. We are also up against 24 presidential campaigns. Their volunteers, their donors, and their machines. Where are you going to be this fall? Are you going to be on the streets of the city of Manchester? Are you going to be on the donor lists? Are you going to be doing the door-to-door, making the phone calls, and otherwise helping the lighthouses stand against the storm? It's time to get it done. Thank you.
Croc TV.